Welcome to the Law and Justice Show with me, Terry Njueni, and this is Haki FM, the Oasis of Justice. How are you doing this fantastic Thursday, the 24th of October, 2024? Talk to me at Haki FM on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, or you can call me on 07993882237 or 07503882237, or you can text me on WhatsApp at 0791740453. And today is a very special day because, as I had promised you, we will be having our guest in studio, and he's already here. And we're going to be talking about the freedom of worship vis-a-vis regulation of churches. And without further ado, I would like to ask my guest to introduce himself. Wakili.
Good morning to your viewers, and good morning to you, Terry. It's a pleasure to come here today. My name is Mugendi. I am an advocate at the High Court. I specialize in a number of areas, such as AI digital consultancy, constitutional law, research. I also do litigation, criminal law. So that is my background.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Na utuambie kwa nini umepotea hivyo? Tumekungojea wiki mbili. Lakini umepatikana ya tatu.
As you can see, I have been on the airwaves.
Mambo ni mengi.
Mambo ni mengi. Yes.
All right, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
We want to talk about the freedom of worship vis-a-vis regulation of churches, which I think is something very, very vital in our country today, looking at what is going around. And even in the event that we have seen an attempt of churches now being followed and, preachers being gagged, if I may say. So first and foremost, what does the Constitution say, or how does the Constitution safeguard the freedom of religion in Kenya?
Thank you. We start from the basis that the Constitution is the grand norm. It is what provides every other rule that is attached to our regulation, but also it's a mirror to society. It's a collective aspiration of our dreams, our goals, all rolled into one. So in framing the Constitution, the framers felt that freedom of worship being a key issue in this country. 85% of the population being Christians, we have about 1.5 being identifying as either one religion or another. It can be tempting to interpret this as a Christian nation. The temptation is literally right there. But you can see, though we acknowledge the supremacy of God, at Article 8 we say there is no state religion. So Kenya does not have a state religion. Article 32 presents an interesting scenario as well, that we have everyone being given a right, actually not being given, everyone being facilitated to worship God according to the dictates of their conscience, including observing a day of worship alone or in community with others, and no one can be coerced for or against a personal conviction in religion. So that is the context on which we are operating, that though majority are Christians, the nation itself, the government, does not recognize that we are a Christian nation. It explicitly says that we are not a state religion, but if you hold a religious belief, you are free to hold it. So no one is allowed to coerce you for or against it. And that includes in community with others, the manner of discharging it, and a day of worship.
What are the limitations we have to this freedom under the current legal framework?
Well, that is a question which I have been really thinking about for a long, long time. Because ideally, we have a situation where Article 32 gives a very wide latitude, that freedom to worship God, the manner of discharging it, whether alone or in concert with others. But then, here comes the issue. Can you worship God as you encourage people, say, to torture others? Now you have crossed over from religion to something different. Can you worship God while encouraging people to kill each other? That has crossed the limits of religion. So, the worship of God itself does not have a limitation. The key issue to understand, as I see it at Article 32, is whether the conduct has crossed the realm of worship and now gone into the sphere of civil authority. That is our relations between you and I. If I harm you on the basis of religion, then by right, the society has a right to avenge you by having me arrested, arraigned in court, and charged with a particular offense. And that, for me, is where the distinction is. But as we go along, we will be able to clarify and see how this distinction plays out, and sometimes also does not play out quite clearly.
Talking of limitation, it is
Yes.
impossible to discuss this topic without having to mention the Shakahola massacre,
Yes.
whereby we had more than 400 bodies exhumed. And I don't know how far we are with that case. But that said, the president formed a task force to look into that and come up with reforms.
Yes.
Or sort of a regulatory framework. Only for him later to say that he will not choose to go that direction, as opposed to letting the church regulate, letting the religious groups regulate themselves. So I'm saying all this to ask, what was the reason for the formation of that task force? Do you think it would have been effective? Did it make sense to form that task force in the first place?
That's a tricky question, because the public outcry was 400 people have been murdered, and I'm using the word deliberately murdered. So the context is they were murdered in the context of, say, religion. They were convinced that for you to access heaven or to access the grace of God and any other thing that they might have been convinced of, that this is a route. We will isolate ourselves. We will subscribe to the views of one leader. We will do what the leader says without question. And we will challenge anyone who opposes our train of thought. Now, the task force in and of itself, I don't think is a bad thing. It is meant to investigate, try and isolate the issue. What really happened? But you see, the task force was also not working alone.
Yeah.
Security agencies were also there. There was a Commission on Human Rights, which was also there. There are other bodies that are assisting in that. The Ministry of Interior and National Coordination, which was very much present in trying to unearth what went on. So for me, the task force formation is not the issue.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is what did they find and what did they recommend? Because it is good to know what really happened in the first place. You know, why did 400 Kenyans have to lose their lives? So it was a good move by the president to launch the task force and to give it some mandate to do that work. Yeah.
Only for the bill not to see the light of day.
Well, if you and this is why it's good to set the stage in context.
Mm-hmm.
The bill also has regulations, it also has a policy. If you look at the policy, one of the key issues that caught my attention was the issue of vulnerable groups. Now, vulnerability is a bit ambiguous because, let me give you an example. If I convince you to act against your own interest, does the government have a say in that transaction?
No.
It's a very tricky situation. If I convince him to act against his own interest, can the government of right come and say, no, you are not supposed to convince him of 1, 2, 3, 4? I think one of the key things that needed to come out clearly, because I've read the policy in its entirety, all the 74 pages, and the bill and the regulation. What needs to come clearly, I saw it in some parts of the recommendation, was we need to have an empowered society. A society that can formulate independent thoughts. The ability to withstand pressure from alternative views that will make you act against your own interest is based on a set of factors which were also mentioned in the policy. For instance, poverty. You are convinced by someone, don't worry about earthly possession. You have mansions in heaven. Don't worry about the tough life you're going here. Just stay truthful. You have a life in heaven that you could never dream of. So you compromise the quality of life. Yet, in the same Bible, Jesus said, I came to give you life and life in full. You get the contradiction. So someone comes and convinces you to act in a personal interest. Then we invite the government to now act as an arbiter. That presents a challenge because you are literally inviting the government to act as an arbiter of religion, an arbiter of thought or conscience. But that is not to say that if harm comes to you as a result of my actions, there are a variety of laws that are meant to cure that defect. Now, one of the gaps that have been mentioned within the policy were that we do not have specific laws addressing crimes that are committed on the pretext of religion. And as we go along, I think I'll make some recommendations, because we have criminal laws that of right invite the government to interfere with this right when it crosses the limits of conscience and belief and comes to the conduct of society. If you interfere, we say religious liberty encourages, the civil government encourages the virtuous, restrains the vicious. So the most vicious in our society are supposed to be restrained by government as of right. We restrain murderers, we restrain robbers, we restrain pickpockets, we restrain people who obtain money by undue influence. So the context of religion will not be any different if it interferes with the conduct of a member of society who are subscribed to what we would ideally call a social contract. Anywhere there is a government, there is a social contract that you do not take up arms to defend yourself. The society protects you, say, through the police. And that is a key distinction that will come up as we go along, that the conduct or the interference with the safety of members of the society is a preserve of the civil government, which they can do. But the idea that we can invite the government to sort of arbiter, mediate ideas, flow of information, and determine this flow is correct, that flow is not correct, is what I would oppose, and I would say it would not be a very wise thing to do, because it will lead to the government being itself an arbiter of religion. But any conduct that harms members of the society, the government can interfere, and it has a right to interfere within that space.
The question there then comes, how come we had to lose up to 400 people for the government to intervene?
It's the same context which I was alluding to, that perhaps it's not a government issue, because look at the psychological background, the societal context, the poverty, the hopelessness that is there. That is something which the government can try and fix, and it can improve issues. There are those people we call deviants of society, and any society has it. Deviants of society are people who act completely out of line on a variety of issues. They don't feel they have a limit to check their behavior, and so on and so forth. For that particular reason, my observance of the issue directs me to indicate that, number one, if you have a hopeless society, your aim is to fix the well-being of the society first. Because we are dealing with people who made a decision. Now, let me delve that further just a bit. We have very many people who convince each other we can live together for life. But after marriage, you realize this is not the person I married. The people who reach that level now go to the state and say, we want to divorce. Before that point, the government does not interfere with that influence. Why? Anyone who can influence you, who has power over you, can design your perception. So the first phase of correction, in my view, will be the societal order. And societal order, I mean, do these people, say, have access to the right information, and not right information that can help you think. And right information does not come from somewhere very complicated. It comes from balanced homes. Is it the policy of the government to keep families together, to have a mother and a father? Is it the policy of the government that children are taught in school not to children are taught not to recite or to memorize content, but to actually think. The greatest want of today's society is men who can think, process natural thought, separate ideas from one and another. And our education system perhaps is not doing a very good job to encourage that, because we've been in that situation. We encourage more of rote. The better your memory is, the smarter you are. There are people who, for one reason or another, will never get mathematics, but they can make a lot of money. And for me, that is one of the distinctions. So remember, I said the order in society. Order coming from encouraging families to be together. That order comes with, from the onset, I think that's what the CBC is trying to do. From the onset, children are encouraged to stretch their mental faculties, to distinguish that this idea will not be good for me, this idea is good for me, right from the onset. Because these seeds of willingness to harm yourself, they germinate from childhood. So if children from a young age are encouraged right from the start that our children are taught to be thinkers, not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts, you have a good starting point. 2, the society is encouraged to engage in commerce that generates in wealth for the society. The ability of our government to encourage people to make more, earn a living, it encourages and rewards those who are working hard, is also a key thing that can fix the societal order. Because even among the people who are well-to-do, you will be shocked that they can also be convinced to make decisions that are contrary to their interest. So for me, the primary issue is, does our education system, do our families, our parents, encourage people to be thinkers, not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts? And the African system did that very well, because I grew up in a system where I had access to my grandmother from the onset and my grandfather. So most of the weekends I would travel, we would sit around a fire and we would discuss issues. They would guide, they would address. Every evening in a home there was a devotion or a discussion where the father and mother is able to say and guide. Those things do a far better job than what a law could do to restrain someone. Because, like I said, the deviants of society do not subscribe to those limits, so they will be willing to break them whenever they feel they need to break them.
True.
So for me, that would be the primary interest, especially within some of those areas. Start with the children. When they grow up, what is the upbringing like? If there is a pandemic of single motherhood, there should be a campaign to encourage fathers to be at home. If the education system is not encouraging children to think, let there be a campaign where children are engaged in artisanship. Children can learn at a young age how to mix cement, basic issues, in a fun and gentle way. I think I'm seeing now children trying with the CBC. Some are even making projects which are quite interesting to see some of my friends struggling with in the evening to help their children.
Yeah.
They engage your mental faculties so that if you reach a point where your thought process or your ideology is challenged, you are able to make a decision that does not act against your interests.
Well, I do agree with you, Wakili. Now that we are not there yet because of what we are seeing around, how then do we fix this laxity on the part of the government, whereby there is an illegal sect that has been killing people and it has gotten to 400, and this is when we are realizing, how do we fix that?
Let me surprise you. Perhaps that is not the only sect.
True.
And the other reality that we have to face is that these things have also been going on for a very long time. Now, if they've been going on for a very long time, your solution cannot be found within 6 months. The ability to reverse this damage cannot occur in a short time. There must be slow, concerted, dedicated, consistent, and disciplined efforts. Now that will require, one, either the government takes up some of these things that I was saying on a very personal basis. Let me give you an example. We have a war on illicit brews. Do we have a war on single motherhood?
I've not heard of one.
But single motherhood fixes a lot of societal problems. You get the point?
Mm-hmm.
So some of the priorities are also wrong. So it will take some time. Now, the convenient cure is we're going to come up with a law, we are going to arrest you, we are going to charge you in court. We have been having laws for the longest time, and people have still been breaking them. If the internal constitution of your members of society is out of order, then the laws will not help. A character flaw can never be fixed by laws. As much as we would wish, it can never fix. Look at a wayward child. A wayward child, the cure is not to insist to them that they are evil, because children are different. The cure for a wayward child is, one, patience. To understand context. Why is my child behaving erratically? Why is my child fighting in school? Why is my child unable to have good interactions with other children? So if you take the option of, these are the rules of this house, if you do this and come at home, I will beat you, I will beat you, I will beat you, I will beat you, and that's all they hear, they will never change. Because the internal constitution of a human being is not designed in that manner. The internal constitution of a human being is designed, number one, for positivity. So any negative environment that is generated creates resistance. So, and I would apply the same. So perhaps our priorities should now focus to, if we want to cure this, what is the best solution? Will it take 1 year, 2 years? No. It will take perhaps a generational change. But that will come with disciplined, concerted, consistent efforts. Yeah.
When the president talks about self-regulation, how does that look like and how does it play about?
This is a question which I even ask Christians to think about generally, because they are the ones I can relate to the most. In the Bible, you're told if you have conflict with a brother, you go with 1 or 2 people, you go and tell the brother, you have offended me, and I would want to make amends with you. That is a context in the Bible. Now, if you go to the context of civil government, we do not have provisions for forgiveness. In civil government, we have provisions for penalties. You commit a crime, we punish you. So God's government is based on forgiveness. But since God ordained society and the government comes from society, the government is quite different. It does not operate with the realm of forgiveness. If the government were to operate on the realm of forgiveness, we will not have a government, because someone steals or carjacks a car, we forgive. That economy will not last 12 p.m. By 12 p.m., this society will be completely out of order. And I hope we can get the two. That murderer can pray, and the moment he prays and has a contrite confession, there is a hymn that says, that moment from Jesus a pardon received. You know, the vilest offender. So, self-regulation, in my view, is the government's way of saying we do not want to interfere with the operations of religion and religion affairs. Minimal is attractive, but complete exclusion is the most desirable. Because remember what I said from the beginning, should any member, regardless of whether you're in a religious space or not, interfere with the well-being of a member of society to enjoy their space in society, to harm them, the conduct of their bodies, then the government of right comes in, regardless of whether it's a religious issue or not. So I would say it was a recognition of that principle, that we do not want to interfere with this space. One, because it is a unique space. Religion or your thoughts and conscience are within your thoughts, secrets, and intentions of your heart. And let me use examples that are easily identifiable. One, if you say you love someone, I do not know in your heart if you truly love someone. You will have to show someone you love them. We know of people who don't love each other, but they will go to the altar and say, till death do us part. Right? Similarly, the conviction or the rebellion or the dissatisfaction with one religious view or another is an internal mechanism that you owe only to God. In fact, God says in John, I think 12 verse 47, I came not to judge the world. If anyone hears my words and believe me not, I did not come to judge you. You have a right to accept me and to refuse my words. And on that basis, I think, is where we walk a cautious path in trying to regulate the matters of religion and church affairs, because they operate in a space where the government cannot reach. You know, the government can interfere with my relations between and you, but the government does not know what is my current, what I'm thinking right now. Yes.
But you know, Wakili, we can. I get where you're coming from,
Yeah.
but I think we can set the basics. Something like, let everyone who is running a church have some theological education. You know, we must not go extreme to what you're teaching and what people are believing. But I think something like a basic education to ensure that we do not have quacks who are coming up to start churches so that they can rob people of money. I think we can have like a threshold of some sort. What do you think?
It's an attractive idea because at the back of your idea, you're honestly thinking of, oh, I have a relative who was conned. They gave all their money to church. But what you keep forgetting, even in my profession, there are quacks. This heavily regulated profession, there are serious quacks roaming around. And that's why I said the deviants of society do not respect the rule of law. The best inhibitor of some of these characters or these deviants has never been laws. The best limitation is an empowered society that is able to say the same words I gave you in John 12 verse 47. I can hear your words and I can reject you. The same ability you have to hear someone and say, I agree with the pastor on point A, B, C, and D, but E and F, I do not agree with. That ability is a greater restraint than us saying we have a law. For instance, if you suggest to me pastors should have degrees, okay, where will these degrees be conferred from? Will they be conferred by the government or the religious institution?
Religious institution.
Okay, religious institution. What if I don't subscribe to a religious institution? Then the government will give me the degree. You see, you're still inviting the government to arbiter in religion. There are those people who do not have, they worship God without a religious institution. There are those people who don't subscribe to a certain creed or doctrine or religious organization. Because the nature of religion itself, and even the way Article 32 is framed, it is enjoy yourself, enjoy with others, you can discharge it, you can even observe a day of worship. Now, to invite the government to say, if you are not in this religious space, we will guide you on what to do, is what I would call, with tremendous respect, putting a premium on laziness of thinking. It is our society needing that empowerment. That is a check and balance. When you give a tithe, I presume you are a Christian, yes?
Yeah.
If you give tithe, you can also say this Sunday, I don't want to give tithe. Right? Your church will never know.
Okay, mine has records.
It has a record, but it will never know the decision that you made on is unless you go tell the pastor, today I refuse to give tithe.
Yeah.
Not everybody can say that. Or does your pastor know that maybe you didn't pray twice a week? Does your pastor probably know what you are thinking while he's preaching?
No.
So those are the things that I'm saying. That ability to make a choice that does not compromise your interest is what is the greatest check and balance. These others are stopgap measures, but they will not do justice in the long haul. In fact, the more we invite the government to interfere, the more you will have more of these things exploding. For instance, you tell the government, okay, we want to be giving those who are not subscribed to religious organizations, we want to be the ones to give degrees. Okay. So they will be based on which particular sect or creed. Will it be based on Catholic ideology, Seventh-day ideology, Presbyterian ideology, Quaker ideology, Mohammedan ideology, Buddhist ideology? You get the difference? The latitude is too far that it will make the idea quite superfluous. So, the major issue that checks and limits some of these things is to ensure that, number one, and this is what I think we should come to later. Unpopular opinion, it will even shock you. Start by taxing some of these churches. There is absolutely no reason why churches are not being taxed. You will see some discipline. If you want the immediate one, the one that we are feeling, oh, there needs to be some order or discipline, start by taxing them. What would be the rationale of someone enjoying a tax exemption. Yet they want to participate in the public order. They are enjoying government benefits. They are enjoying government exemptions. And the only basis is that we are next to God. I don't know if the point is clear. If you want an immediate measure to restrain some of these churches, tax them.
Okay, I have my reservations around that, but we will come back to that on the other side.
I told you it will interfere with your mental thinking.
On the other side of this break, I am with Advocate Jared Mugendi here in studio, and we're talking about the freedom of worship vis-a-vis regulation of churches. It is exactly 2 minutes past 9. Good morning.